Notre Dame at USC. This is an interesting one, in my opinion, Mason. Notre Dame and USC are two totally different styles of teams here. Notre Dame has won 5 of the last 6 in this series. USC's last win coming at home in 2022, which they will be at home in this one. As I said, Notre Dame has been the best in the nation against the pass this year and are going to do their best to put a hamper on what has been a really good passing attack for USC. Go figure, right? Lincoln Riley having a good passing attack. Whenever you ever heard about that? Even whenever USC sucks, Lincoln Riley still has his fingerprint all over this program, and they pass to the tune of about 280 yards per game, and do a really good job of that. This past week, though, for USC, they barely snuck away with a victory against UCLA out there on the West Coast, and I it was all to do with the fact that USC was not able to get in the end zone and score touchdowns. I was looking at the scoring chart on that game from this past weekend because we had actually kind of forgot to talk about on the reaction show just because there was so much other stuff to talk about, right? I mean, we're not talking about that game, but USC didn't score a touchdown until the fourth quarter of that football game. All field goals, the whole game. And so all those yards and everything are great, but if you're kicking field goals and not scoring touchdowns, then that's not a good sign, especially considering you're going to be going against a lot better defense in Notre Dame in this game. Now, Notre Dame has not been a team that hasn't had to deal with injuries, just like everybody else has. Notre Dame has had some pretty tough injuries to deal with. Mr. Cross there on the defensive line did not play this past game against Army. He has got an ankle injury. We'll see if he's going to be able to make it back for this one. Howard Cross is a big deal, literally and schematically. He is a big deal. And Benjamin Morrison, obviously out for the season, among other guys on that offensive line. Shrouth, that's out for the season. So there's been some injuries that Notre Dame has had to overcome here. And the defensive line and offensive line, the defensive line for Notre Dame and the offensive line for USC is what I'm most interested in. I bet on USC a couple of weeks ago against Nebraska, and my whole premise on betting for USC was the fact that Nebraska's claim to fame was their defensive line. And I thought that defensive line would prove to be nullified by what has been a pretty good offensive line for USC. So I'm interested to see that matchup in this game, especially if Howard Cross is not playing in this one. How does that affect? I mean, obviously that's one of your better players defensively. So I'm interested to see what USC is able to muster up offensively. They really use Woody Marks in the pass game a lot. That's really what he came in as a specialist, catching the ball out of the backfield, and he's done that a ton this year. So they do that rather than run the football a lot. I'm interested to see that matchup as well. This one's hard to call for me, Mason. It really, really is. I know USC sucks. I see it. I understand. But Notre Dame going to USC, we've seen Notre Dame be so consistent ever since that NIU game. Is this a game where they falter a bit? Maybe you could give us your take while I make my mind up.
Yeah. Yeah, well, my concern is this game being on the road, long road trip for Notre Dame to go and face the Trojans. USC has kind of ditched Miller Moss here recently. They've been going with Maeva at quarterback. You're probably going to, I guess we can expect to see Miller Moss transfer out at the end of this season. But Maeva was I believe he came over from UNLV. But he was a quarterback that actually was scheduled to go to Georgia, and then at the last minute, ended up back in the transfer portal and ended up at USC. But nonetheless, pretty capable quarterback. Hasn't really done a ton yet. He did win them the Nebraska game and looked pretty good there. But ultimately Miller Moss just wasn't getting it done. wasn't able to kind of run the system that Lincoln Riley needed him to. So they made an adjustment there, and it's worked out so far. Now, my concern for USC and the offense in this football game is the fact that they are very pass heavy, and Notre Dame's defense, they're good against the run, but their secondary might be the best in the country. I mean, they are phenomenal. They're number one in the country in passing yards given up per game at just 140 yards per game. Now they don't play a ton of really good offenses. It's and offenses that are really good at passing the football. This is probably the best offense that they've faced, and from a passing attack perspective. So weigh that however you will. But I really like this defense and the defensive backs. They have a nose for the football. They're 10th in the country in interceptions, 20th in the country in fumbles. So just really good. They're not giving up a ton of yards. They're finding ways to get the offense, the football back, and really just playing good complementary football. The defense is doing what they need to do offensively for Notre Dame. They're still a run-heavy team. And that's been sort of the bugaboo for this USC defense for the past couple of years. It seems like they're playing better on defense and they're stopping the run a little bit better now. But now teams are passing all over them. So I'm anxious to see what Notre Dame does in this game from an offensive perspective. How do they want to attack it? Do they want to go over the top and get Riley Leonard, get his arm nice and stretched out in this football game, or do they feel confident that they can win it on the ground? I think that they could go either way with it. As long as Riley Leonard is not turning the football over, I think that they're fine. He's done a really good job of protecting the football all year long, so I don't expect that to kind of open up here. Looking at the spread, I think that the betting public is going to want to be on Notre Dame, and the fact that the line is set at 7 gives me a ton of pause. I think that this is one of those fishy lines where I feel like Vegas knows something that we don't, and so I would bet on USC to cover this. It's between just the fact that I think that that Vegas set a tough line to bet on, and the fact that you've got a home underdog. I'm gonna take the home underdog here and say that that USC covers and potentially wins this football game. Would not surprise me a bit. I expect Notre Dame to win, but given the way that the season has gone, and it's tough to call upsets like this. But I think it could very well happen here, and so for that, I'm going to stay on the home side here and take USC and the points.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Let me add myself back to the screen here. But look at some of these trends in this game. I really like to pay attention to this stuff, and it definitely means something. Look at Notre Dame, 7-0 in their last 7 games against the spread, right? Total has gone over in 5 of Notre Dame's last 7 games. And obviously Notre Dame 9-0 straight up in their last 9 games, 5-1 straight up in the last 6 games against Southern Cal. USC, on the other hand, Southern Cal is 8-4 against the spread in their last 12. So both of these teams have been really good at covering spreads. Southern Cal is they're 5-0 against the spread in their last 5 games at home, right? Southern Cal 8-2 against the spread in their last 10 games when playing at home against Notre Dame. So all this stuff, I mean, both of these teams have got some reasons to kind of go on that side, right? It's a tough one to call here. My gut is telling me Notre Dame is going to be able to out physical this team. I watched Notre Dame absolutely ragdoll Army this past week, and I'm not saying that we can take something from that necessarily and transition it to this game, and that's going to be so. But Notre Dame's physicality is on a whole nother level than USC's, and that's what USC has been lacking for a while. They're soft, and now they're down a bunch of players too. And one of your best defensive players, Eric Gentry, is out. Notre Dame is going to be running the football. Riley Leonard is going to be running the football here. I think Notre Dame covers here. I think the over hits in this one. I think USC adds, I think they do a little bit better offensively than what people think that they're going to. I think Ben Morrison being out, kind of hurts a little bit in this instance. You haven't had a team that's really been able to test Notre Dame's secondary a whole heck of a lot. USC is going to do that. They're going to get yards. They're going to get some points here. I think the over hits. I like Notre Dame -7 here to probably win this thing by 8 to 10 points. And as I said, the over to hit over 51.